Hi everyone. So allow me to formally kick off this afternoon session by me introducing first our expertise speakers on data and AI. So today we are joined by Mr. Shwetank Sheel, Chief Executive Officer of Jess Analytics. Also, we have Ms. Poonam Sampat, data and AI expert from Microsoft. Thank you, speakers, for joining us today. How are you guys?
We're
We're
doing
doing well.
great.
Yeah, right. Are you guys excited?
Very excited.
All
Very much
right.
so.
So yep, let's now start. There has been a lot of talk about connecting business with analytics. And the common perception is that only businesses with big budgets are able to afford this. What's your opinion on this and why is it important for businesses?
Well, that's a great question, Rochelle.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so, first of all, hello everyone for joining in, and I hope you and your families are doing great and are safe back home. So, COVID-19 has really changed the way we use technology. So, it is very evident that big data and AI is the way forward. I can see a lot of use cases wherein big data and AI has helped us during the COVID-19 situation, from the real-time COVID trackers to really population compliance using the GPS data, or even just creating models which can predict the pandemic. So you can see that there's a lot of statistics also that has been uh, published with agencies, which talk about what's going to be happening in the predicted, I mean, the near future in maybe the year 2024 or 2023. There are two things that I would like to talk about. The first one being by the year 2024, there are going to be organizations who have enabled ML based business decisions. They're going to definitely have an edge. They're going to have a productivity increase of twice than the companies who have not enabled ML. So, and another statistic that is really important is, by the year 2023, 70% of the G2000 companies are going to be able to realize the value from the data that they are creating, using, and they will have that vantage point and that competitive edge. So I feel the business intelligence, big data, and AI is the way forward. Shwetank, what do you feel about this?
I completely agree with what we're talking about here. And again, just wanted to welcome everyone and thanks for taking time to attend this. I would actually go a step further to say that, in my interactions with business leaders nowadays, analytics has become a must-have instead of a good-to-have. Business leaders are recognizing that not doing analytics is a risk rather than purely looking at this as an opportunity. If we, recently there was a study done by Deloitte which found that business analytics amongst business leaders seems to be as important as managing risk or managing reputation management. So it's not a question about whether you can do it, but the fact that you have to do it. And interestingly, this mind shift also comes along with the fact that analytics is now being thought of fundamentally to drive business process changes, to drive customer experience improvements. It's being considered more fundamentally to think about how to measure and also drive company strategy. And also, we're looking at more mature customers who are actually starting to use the data that they have to both build new products and services and also to understand and monitor the competition to see how you can benchmark against what's being done and how you can improve. So, what I'd say is that it's no longer a question of whether you can do it or not, but really a question of how quickly you can get started to not lose a competitive edge.
I totally agree on that, Shwetank. So, going to the next piece of the question was really, can only, big budget companies go for data and analytics? Well, I don't think so. So let me just explain to you how business intelligence or business analytics works. So, there's a lot of word association with business intelligence, business analytics. There is ML thrown in, there is AI thrown in. But for any organization to really move from, business intelligence to AI, there are 4 steps that you need to really take. So the first one, you go with asking the questions to your data that exists that, hey, what was the last sale that happened? How was my last quarter? What was the products that I sold? That's the business intelligence. And then you move forward to the machine learning where you say that, hey, what was the churn that I should expect in my customers maybe in the next quarter? The next stage is wherein you say that, okay, I know who are the customers who are going to churn, but what can I do to really help them? Can I know if the customers are price sensitive? Do I know that the customers are, quality sensitive? That's the data science piece of it. And the last is AI. So AI is many outcomes and the system really checking what is the best outcome. So that's the stages that you can see. And believe me that the companies that you see today, the 70 to 80% companies are still in the last, the first 2 quadrants, that is business intelligence and machine learning. So that's where the companies are. And only 1% of the industry is in the artificial intelligence space. Really, the bulk of machine learning that we are doing is still BI and ML. And believe me, all organizations need to really think about how they can, uh, you know, map this journey of AI. Really, where are they? Are they at a foundational level? They are exploring AI, how it can help them in their use cases, or they are at the next level wherein they are familiar with AI, with machine learning, but they really don't know how to start. So, that's the phase. Or they already have a team which are application developers. They don't have the complete data science experience. And the last segment is they are machine learning pros. So now when you're thinking about the first 2 segments wherein it's just business intelligence and machine learning, the number of open source softwares that are available, they are abundant. And even Azure as a platform provides many free services for businesses to try this journey. So I feel, budgets are really not a constraint when you think about implementing that data centricity and AI into your organization.
All right. Poonam and Shwetank, just to also add, I really cannot emphasize more on how data and AI can really give your organization the insights from the data they are generating from their, everyday business operations. So, in line with that, what opportunities do you think organizations can benefit from an AI-powered business intelligence? And how can they solve the technical challenges of implementing business analytics?
Um, so this is another good question that we hear a lot from organizations, like what are the opportunities. So I really won't go into which use case per industry, but what I would like to talk about is really the analytics 3.0 wave. So if you can see, I have listed 4 companies here: the Bosch Group, Schneider, General Electric, and UPS. So what's common across these 4 organizations is they have a legacy of 100 plus years. And for example, let's start with Schneider. They started really manufacturing steel and iron. And if you see today, what they've done is they have used the data that they have, the experience that they have, to convert that entire business model into something like, the solutions they sell today is around energy optimization, smart grid and management, building automation. Similarly with GE, they definitely make the engines, but they sell, they have these solutions around analytics, engines as a service, wherein they are able to say, okay, we know in real time your engine or parts of the engine is going to be failing in say couple of weeks, and this is the best slot you should replace it or repair it. So that's their business model today. So it's best to use AI or machine learning, data centricity to not only answer your internal business decisions, but to also help build that new set of revenue lines wherein you're thinking of these new products and services that you're building around your data landscape and AI. So with that, Shwetank, what is your experience around this?
I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, Poonam. When I've been dealing with customers around the region, one of the questions that I get asked is, how do we get started? Because, there are organizations which are just beginning on this journey. And in some of those cases, obviously being able to derive new products and new services from your data that you've got collected is critical. However, I've come across companies who are sort of at a slightly less mature or just getting started from that perspective. And that's where even the internal business questions, as you were saying, those become easy things to actually get started with. And because I've been asked this a couple of times, there is an interesting McKinsey study which actually went through the process of talking to customers who've been doing this for 3, 4, 5 years, focused on internal use cases, right? So things like, how do I affect my top line by either doing cross-sell and upsell for customers, or how do I actually identify which customers are going to churn, or looking at the bottom line. So things like predictive maintenance is something that comes up often. Things like demand planning is stuff that comes up often. So the good news is that these have been done often enough, and what we will find is that on the patterns around analytics in terms of what is the input, what is the output, what is the track record in a particular industry or across industries in each of these has already been established. And of course, while your mileage may vary based on the different sets of data that you have, it is clear that when you're looking to get started, there are certain sets of use cases. So things like predictive maintenance or demand planning from a backend perspective, where there is a clear history of organizations being able to achieve, between 20 and 50% cost savings. And alternatively, looking at things like pricing optimization or market basket assortment, etc., where there has been a clear history of being able to improve the top line or the margin. So those who are looking to actually build up business cases, I think we are now in a stage in the hype cycle where we've gotten past this just being a cool term to the point where it's actually been consistently delivering business value. Now, I think the other part of this question also spoke about the technical challenges. Yes, we're talking about the value, but when organizations are looking to get started, how do they get past the technical challenges? Now, from this perspective, I would say rather than think of it as sort of one large technical challenge, it becomes good to sort of break it down into a smaller set of questions, which are both easier to understand and then also easier to sort of relate back to specific areas, which can be addressed. So, I've taken the liberty of sort of putting down what some of those questions or perspectives may be. And, obviously the first one is around scope and purpose. And this is, coming from one of the habits of highly effective people. You have to begin with the end in mind. You have to have an idea about why you're trying to do this, what is the definition of success, and that drives what data you should get, etc. Now, talking about data, again, while you have to take steps incrementally, and things like the cloud nowadays and all the components that become available as part of Azure Data Platform make it easy for you to get started. Both from a collection and architecture perspective, you need to think about what are the different components that I can plug and play. How do I get started quickly now, but also use something that tomorrow when I add in more use cases because I believe there's more value coming in, that I don't have to throw away what I've done. Now, all of that is from the data perspective, but of course, it is very important to have your actual users in mind. So both from an insight and analysis, how is this going to be consumed? Who's going to be consuming this? How do I make this available? And governance, of course, is at the core. I've heard lots of examples of how data is compared to different things. Oil is a good example, obviously. Of if it is really the thing which is of value, you can't leave it open. You have to have some sort of structure around how you protect it. those structures are both processes as well as technologies. So you have to sort of think about it from that slice perspective. And then, of course, as with anything, you need to address sort of the standard backend challenges around what are going to be the SLAs, what are going to be the access and security, etc. Now, when you break it down this way, it becomes easier to start to say, okay, now, for each of these, what are the sets of things that I should be doing? And if you think about it this way, it becomes much easier. And the public cloud actually has a lot of different components which can address each of these things, from a low code to a high code approach, depending on where your organization is or what you want to be adopting. So, Poonam, do you have any thoughts about sort of the components that could map out to these sets of perspectives?
Sure, Shwetank. So previously, when I was talking about the maturity model, I said that, you're really going from business intelligence to, do I understand AI? How can I use it, to artificial intelligence? So, the cloud offers range of products wherein once you've mapped your journey, you know how to move and what technology to really use. So, starting with BI and apps, if you're just starting in, you're very fresh, you're not really convinced that AI is the way forward, we have Power Platform wherein you can quickly try, quickly see if it works for you, do that A/B testing and move forward. The second is, if you are convinced that I know my use case, I have my data, which is all fine, can be used for my machine learning models, but I don't have the real know-how. How do I really build that model? How do I consume it? So that's where, we have a SaaS-based approach. Typically, you could use Dynamics 365, wherein we have inbuilt machine learning built. So consider you want to do something around customer insights. So you could just go to Dynamics 365, put your data in, and you have all the tools and all the goodness that a machine learning model provides to you without having to know data science. The next set is, hey, I already have app developers, not really data science per se, but I want to start. What do you have? Then we have Azure Cognitive Services, wherein an app developer could just plug and play, and you have the best machine learning available to you. We have industry accelerators. We have solution templates that you could use. And the last is, if you have this COE data science team and now you have really built your models, but you want to productionize it, really manage the DevOps story, we have services around that as well. So it's really only mapping yourself to the AI journey so that you can pick and choose what tools really are helpful. Also, at Microsoft, we want to ensure that the customers can go from a range of low code to really all code, right? So we have a lot of services. If you recently attended the digital build, we announced Azure Synapse Analytics, wherein we've made it very easy for customers to just get their data, drag and drop and create those insights. As I already spoke about Dynamics 365, this is our SaaS-based offering wherein you can, build multiple models over here. And we also have Azure Machine Learning, wherein we are doing the sophisticated models using responsible AI and doing all the deployment for the customer. So I think technology is all available. You just have to have the right mindset to use it. Yep.
All right. Yeah, it's really amazing, Poonam and Shwetank, how data analytics and AI tools is really readily available, and that can help organization cater their business requirements. So in line with this, what trends and changes have you noticed in business analytics, and can you share some best practices and case studies when it comes to implementing business analytics?
Sure. So when you're thinking of best practices around, business analytics, really, it's, defining the right use case, selecting the right question. So the question needs to be really sharp, as to what is it that you want to achieve? Why is it that you want to achieve that? It can be tied to your business problem. That's what makes it real. It needs to be simple, right? We don't want to start with a complex problem and go nowhere with it. And The other best, the best practice that I've seen that works with customers is looking beyond the short-term deadlines. You want to go beyond just 1 quarter, 2 quarter, but you want to see what is it my organization wants to achieve. Getting end users to, participate in getting the right questions, getting the questions that are most useful for them is also a great thing. The most important trend that I've seen is if you're able to break company silos, it's not about creating that COE of excellence for data science and letting them create the best of art models, but actually having them to pass that model information to the rest of the user community so that they know how to use these model, how this model is going to actually help them answer those questions. So it's really about breaking those silos and working as an organization to bring that culture of data science. And the most important thing is to try hard and fail fast. As I said, this is not a silver bullet. The models are not going to answer all the questions to the utmost perfection that you need. So you need to try, you need to fail, and again, get up and try more models. That's what is the thing that has worked best when I've worked with customers in this space. Around use cases, really, I would like to highlight one use case where we worked with Shell. So this is, as you all know, what Shell does. They had a lot of good machine learning models, but what was important for them was to get that real-time analytics going on. So for them, their personal security is of most important because say that you're at a petrol bunk and, there's a personnel who's helping fill that petrol, or there's a customer filling the petrol by themselves. If they've kept the lid open or, they have some harmful material around, it could really be a great threat because, it's a life and death situation. So what we did with them is we had cameras focusing at all points, and we use the IoT edge wherein it would detect from a capture what is that is hazardous, and would actually, the model would then trigger and say that, hey, there is some hazard that is noticed and you want to act upon it, and immediately there would be a notice sent to the administrative person at the bank and they could take action. So you're seeing AI being used in real-time scenarios to help in a very critical workload. So that's a very good example that I wanted to showcase. Shwetank, I'm sure you've had many industry experiences that you want to share.
Yes, Poonam. So, what I'll highlight is in my experience, one of the things that we have seen changing recently, but has always been a challenge historically, has been that analytics has been considered a tech project, whereas it's not really a technology question. So when I talk about sort of best practices, it's not about technology, but it's actually about driving this cultural transformation for the investments to become effective. And when I talk about that, I have 4 points, and I have 3 examples that I'll take to showcase how these sorts of things have been done. The first 2 are sort of fairly well tied together. Think from a data perspective, don't get lost in your biases. And in order to do that, you need to actually use data to answer questions or to validate. Now, if we are trying to drive that this is what is supposed to happen within the organization, we need to ensure that data is democratized so that people have access to data, yes, within the standard governance around what you can see and auditability provenance, but it's not a privilege. It's a basic right that you provide to the folks who work as part of this process. And the last point is, as Poonam nailed it, I think try hard and fail fast. You have to allow people to try things and evaluate whether they work or not. So it's not about always being successful, but it's about being able to try things quickly. So for this, I have sort of 3 examples of different work that we've done that I'll call out. The first one is actually the National Gallery, and I really like this example because this is not a typical sort of company you would associate with data. It's a gallery. It's all about art. So you would think that data, Excel, etc., is not something that would be important to them. But interestingly enough, obviously, the National Gallery of Singapore, their objective is to share the art that is existing within Singapore and Southeast Asia with the citizens. That's their mandate. So the question was, how do you effectively get a country like Singapore, which is sort of very caught up in STEM and not so much in sort of art and culture? How do you get them to be interested and actually come in and see different forms of art? Everybody here was very passionate about it, but if you think about, they would have different kinds of ads that they would put up on Facebook, and they would actually go in and look at which ones are getting more views to see what do Singaporeans appreciate. Now, I take this as an example of democratizing data because what we did with them had nothing to do with reports. It was purely about being able to build out this platform, and we use the Azure Data Platform for that, where we could get feeds of data from social media. We could get feeds of data from Google Analytics, so people using the app in the gallery, they know what they're liking. We could get data from their ticketing system, so we know what impact it's having on tickets purchases, and we could get data from their people counting system, which would tell you, how much time are people spending in galleries. And the focus of what we did was to actually bring that together and expose it to the users. Now, how they use it was completely up to the users. It had nothing to do with sort of a standard management report or any of that. And that sort of really, allowing these frontline business users, the ones who are driving the sales team or the ones who are driving the ticketing or the marketing teams, etc., and giving them access to this has really transformed how the gallery has been engaging with Singaporeans directly. So this is a good example that I like, an atypical company, but one focusing on democratizing data. The next example I have is on data centrism. And it's Pepsi. I don't need to describe what Pepsi is. Everybody knows and either loves Pepsi or loves Coke. I am mandated because we did a project for them to say that I like Pepsi now, but that may or may not be the case for you. So this I like to call an example of data centrism because this was a culture shift that the CEO of the Southeast Asia division mandated. He wanted everybody to start using data to effectively talk about how much should they be selling into their distributors, what sorts of campaigns should they be doing, what sorts of things that are, what sort of promotions that are being set up in stores, etc., are working. And again, here, this was sort of a very iterative approach because while he was clear that this had to happen, he also understood that transforming culture, especially in Southeast Asia, is not a straightforward turn it on and good to go sort of mechanic. So it was sort of, driven from a business unit perspective. So we worked with sales first because obviously you want to try to move the top line, but then, it sort of moved across from front office to back office all the way, backwards to finance and production. And, obviously from a reporting perspective, there was a very big impact what happened that, they went from getting their data plus 10 days in the beginning of the month to plus 2 days in the beginning of the month. What also happened is that they were able to repurpose people who were devoted to just creating Excel sheets to actually then being able to analyze and drive sales. But the other thing that's happened is, Poonam mentioned sort of the maturity spectrum. And what's happened is that because of this iterative movement with these guys, we've started to move up that spectrum. So reporting is no longer a problem statement. Now the problem statement is, can I be more accurate in trying to determine how much a distributor should be getting 2 months from now? So can I be more accurate in terms of my raw material procurement for that to happen? And that is where we're actually with them now. We're actually piloting this AI-based sales forecast. And the reason I call out that it's balanced by human inputs is because it's actually something that's not being pushed down, but it's being used to validate and understand what is the information that exists within the organization, which may not be captured by the AI models because the models themselves are learning. So it's sort of a feedback process. But all this is driven because everything is now being done from a data-centric perspective. And the third one that I had, I won't call out the name of the company, but they are a leading semiconductor process manufacturer. And again, this is a good example of continuous learning and critical thinking, because here they have essentially mandated to everyone that we want you to start experimenting with data. We understand that you may be spending certain time to look at and experiment with new ways of consuming this. One of the things you can see is that there's a lot of different screenshots up here, and that's because each department has been trying out things on their own. And the net result that's happened is, we work with different departments, the supplier, the quality control, sales, etc. The business units that have been engaging the most have actually seen a fairly large increase in the key KPIs that they track. So all I wanted to say is this works. It works, and we've seen this work at lots of different customers.
All right. Okay. Moving on. How is business intelligence important for security and compliance of business?
Okay, so let me take a different take on this question. So, when you're doing this data-centric models, you're doing AI, ML, you want to ensure that your data and your models are safe. That is, there is no threat from a security perspective to this data. So, when you're on the say the Azure platform, for example, we have all the nets, safety nets covered for you. So, you can start from external safety to internal, right? So we have this threat protection wherein we have our firewalls, we have who can access it, who cannot access it. We are also running multiple processes within to know if there's any attacks that are happening, because on the public cloud those things do happen. So we are having our own services to help you with threat protection, network security. Now, once you're in the solution, you want to ensure that the right person has the right level of access to the solution. So we have a lot of authentication and access control. And this authentication and access control is to an iota of data. So you can actually go to a file level and say, hey, this person can have these set of permissions maybe for 1 hour. You could even describe that. And then you can also have this on-premise and Azure sync, wherein we are completely understand that not everything is going to be fully cloud, not everything is going to be fully on-premise. So we help you support both worlds as well. So we are having this defense net across various circles to enable a secure solution on Azure.
Okay. Lastly, before we open our session to questions from our audiences, what's your advice on how business could start their own business analytics? Like, what would be the process, and how can these be an impact to their ROI?
So that's a great question, and I think similar to what Poonam and I have been saying throughout this entire session, I think it's about starting small, learning
Right.
fast, and thinking big. So when we work with customers, we try to get them to think in a particular structure. So that is, if you think about this from a three-axis perspective, you have to have a very sharp question, that Poonam has shared earlier. Now, for that sharp question, you need to sort of internally work out and be clear about what data is available. And based on that data and the sharp question, you can then think about what is sort of the specific tech or the specific question that you want to apply. So, for example, if you were to, we highlighted earlier customer churn. So if I take customer churn, the value question can be from a business perspective. If I can identify which customers are going to churn, I can prevent that, I can increase value. But from a customer perspective, I can identify that by doing more personalization, I'm actually increasing the experience of the customer. From an information perspective, I may say, I've got shopping history, I've got browsing history, I've got reviews, comments, all of this that I can use. And then analytics becomes the outcome of these two in order to determine, what algorithms, etc., that you can use. So just putting this together, typically the approach that we ask businesses to follow, rather than thinking of this as one big project, think about it as a funnel where you can start with a large number of different questions. For those questions, the first step is to actually define the value. Let's understand whether this is a legitimate question. What is going to be the expected impact on my business if I'm able to answer this question? The second step becomes identifying what information is available. And as you do that, questions may fall out of the funnel because you may not have information available yet, and it may require you to change some of the process around how you're collecting this. And third is actually going to this from an analytics perspective. So it becomes sort of a fairly staged approach. And at every point you measure, am I getting a value on this, on what I'm putting in? But it ultimately just goes back to having a sharp question and ensuring that you know the definition of success for everything that you're doing.
All right. Thank you for your insights on this, Shwetank and also Poonam. So I'm now opening the floor to our audience here. You may now start sending your questions to be answered by our speakers. So you can start typing your questions now in this Q&A chat box. All right. Here's one of the question, Poonam and Shwetank. Do you have any suggestions for application developers on the best practices for storage and management of data in order to implement machine learning in the future?
Maybe I'll take a first try at that, Shwetank. So typically, when you're answering and you're going up the hierarchy and answering questions for machine learning, you really don't know what data will I need. So the best thing is get all the raw data, store it. And if you're using the cloud, you have cheap storage options available like a data lake. So put all the data in the raw layer and then move on to answer questions, utilize, process that data and go on from there. So I think that's the key question, the key answer. And the other thing is around tiering your data as well. So, you may want to tier your data into a raw zone, a bronze, maybe semi-processed data, and then, the next zone, which could be a gold zone. So, tiering it that way also could help with, implementing machine learning in future. Just one more thing that I would like to add is typically, on the cloud, it's best to store the data in a folder structure instead of just an object store, so that when you're doing your machine learning, you can go ahead and query, like if you want to give me the data for last quarter, you just have to go to the last quarter and get the data. So I think that's my take on the best practices.
All right. Okay, please go ahead, Shwetank.
Yeah, I just wanted to add just one thing to that. Everything Poonam said, I completely agree with. The only thing I'd add on is that, in my experience working with apps, there is sometimes information that isn't necessarily stored in the app. So, for example, somebody may have, address changes that happen. The app may only store the current value of that. Again, it becomes important to actually store all history. So it may make sense to drop that, because from a machine learning perspective, you may want to care about where your customers have moved, whereas from an app perspective, you may only care about their current address, as an example. So it would make sense to be able to use, because in cloud, the storage is so cheap, to be able to actually snapshot your data there as well. Thanks.
All right, great. There's another one from the audience. One of the most difficult things with customer is getting them to understand when machine learning actually becomes a value add to the basic descriptive analytics. What are the key things you would consider while pitching machine learning to customers?
So let me try with, a hand at that question. Really, when you are trying to pitch machine learning to a customer, I feel it makes more sense to understand what are the, issues or what are the challenges the customer has today. Is it around, sales forecasting? Is it around they're not able to optimize something or things like that, or they want to go a little in the future? So getting that business sense from the customer will definitely help anyone trying to move them to the machine learning piece useful, because you'll be able to correctly show value. And it's very simple. If you have the data, you have the descriptive analytics done, to then try a model quickly and show them that real value. So for me, it's really understanding their business process and the challenges that they have. Shwetank, your take?
I agree. And to be honest with you, a lot of the times when we have discussions which seemingly start as AI discussions, they actually transform into data discussions, because, as Poonam had this slide around the maturity level. If you don't understand the value of descriptive, you don't have descriptive, you can't, it's very difficult to actually, jump over stages. It is sort of a stepped journey. So again, as Poonam said, my view would also be to actually start with the question, what is it that you're trying to achieve with that model, and then work backwards from there to see whether data actually exists to be able to have that conversation. Otherwise, it's more of a question about saying, okay, in order to be able to achieve this, these are the steps we need to do before we can even get to machine learning.
All right. So here's another third question from our audiences. AI's fuel to effectively function is data. Given the increasing concerns of privacy and trust, will this limit optimization of artificial intelligence?
Okay, so I think this is a very good question because people don't want their data to be exposed. They want to have privacy of their data. So, well, at Microsoft, we are partnering with many universities wherein we are getting this responsible AI to the forefront, wherein you could actually, want to have fairness in the product and also, trying to ensure that the model is fair to the features. For example, let's consider, you are having a loan modeling exercise to give a loan or not to give a loan. Typical example, right? So you're considering the age, the sex of a person, the income group. Now you want to ensure that the model is not biased by the sex, that, model, the loan is not always given to male and given to females as well. So that's one take, that we want fairness. And the second is privacy. We understand that with health data specifically, you want the privacy to be maintained, that if you're having patient data going onto the cloud, you want it to be anonymous. So what we are having is more packages that we are building wherein you could have differential noise introduced in the model itself, so that the data scientist himself is not able to get to know who is this patient and whom am I linking or making this model for. So we are going into that kind of anonymity in the actual process itself. And there are also a lot of classified AI models that you can run on the Azure platform. Shwetank, your take on this?
I say the same. I mean, very similar. In fact, building anonymization pipelines actually become part of many of the projects that we do to be able to take data and actually strip out things which are actually making it personally identifiable. And I think that brings obviously more fairness and transparency to AI. I don't think it is really a limit. I don't think it's a limiting factor because, I think the security and anonymization capabilities have grown very extensively in the last 12 to 18 months.
All right. So here's the fourth question. Questions are pouring in. So here's the fourth question from our audience. How easy is it to add machine learning or AI via Azure to legacy applications that don't have embedded artificial intelligence capability?
Okay, so going back to that slide where I spoke about the maturity model. So for AI, you just need to start with the data, right? You need to have the data, you need to have it in the right shape and form and to go ahead. So even if you have a legacy application, if you're able to tunnel that data from the legacy application into say CSVs, Excels, plain text files, you can get going. You can, use that data and use maybe cognitive services, which is just a REST API call, and get value from that data. You can pump that data into models, and on Azure, we make that seamlessly possible. So we have a lot of engines to do that. You have Azure Data Factory, wherein I could link to any source really. It could be your CRM applications, it could be on-premise, it can be on any other cloud, which can be, or legacy applications where I could directly just connect to a folder or a drive, get the CSV's notepad and get started with machine learning. Shwetank, what have you done with legacy applications and AI?
We've been doing actually a fair bit of work with, for example, Singapore government agencies, which have a large number of internal legacy applications running on these sort of closed networks where we can take the data to a closed private space in Azure, build out the models, and actually then serve that in real time. So there are plenty of Azure components, things like Kubernetes services where you can deploy, and Azure machine learning itself, which gives you real-time scoring API endpoints, which can then be embedded back into legacy applications. I would say that you should not consider that to be something that was a challenge anymore. That these patterns have been done multiple times over now.
Okay, so another one has currently published their question. So for the fifth one, with things moving towards auto machine learning, how much flexibility is left in the hands of the developer while working with auto ML? Also, how is model transparency ensured while dealing with AutoML?
Okay, that's a good question as well. So, when we are thinking about AutoML, what we are doing is we are we are taking the data, running models with respect to the task that you've asked, maybe a classification, regression, or a forecasting. Now we are very open, wherein you can see actually what models were run, and you can also download that image. So there is total, uh, flexibility for the developers to download that and run that. We are also coming up with many features where you could tweak that model going forward as well. So we are just enabling the data scientist to pick the best model for their metric. It's just about that, because that's a little mundane task which we would like to pick off the data scientist's hand, make that easy for them, and give them the flexibility to use the model that we've chosen using AutoML and tweak it going forward. So model transparency, as I said, you could go download it to a container. You can also see the model, what we've used, and tweak it.
And just to add on to that, I think from a transparency perspective, now there are some of the newer packages actually allow you to create simple proxy models, which are things like decision trees, to understand what is happening in a neural network or some of those more complex deep learning models. So that is becoming available. It is new, it is cutting edge, but it's going to become it is getting to a point where it's becoming quite standard. And again, I'd say AutoML, you should just think about it shifting from a platform for machine learning engineers to an application for machine learning engineers, so you can actually start to do more quickly rather than taking any control away.
Mm-hmm. Right. Great. Last question from our audience. So I am a small business. Which should I prioritize in terms of investment? Should it be Power BI or business intelligence or artificial intelligence?
Well, I think the first question is, what is the challenge that you want to really answer to? Do I have my data? And first start off with BI, get the past data answered, past questions answered, get comfortable, and then move to AI. Shwetank, your take.
I agree, and all I'll just say is that the current generation of BI tools, so tools like Power BI, etc., they already have AI embedded in them to a certain extent. So even without having to make separate divergent investments in AI, you can already start to do things like automated decision trees, simple time series forecasts, etc., within BI. So it would depend on sort of what your focus and priority is, but it is not necessarily a mutually exclusive question.
Mm-hmm. Yep, great. Thank you for sharing your insights with us on this, Shwetank and Poonam. So, unfortunately, we have already reached the end of our 45-minute session. So, if you have some additional questions, you may reach us out at aliana@tech1global.com, and we'll try our best to connect you with our speakers. Also, guys, just to also let you know, by emailing us, you can request and get your free one-on-one analytics discovery session with Just Analytics. And once again, thank you for tuning in. Okay, thank you, Shwetank. Thank you, Poonam.
Thank you.
Thank you.